Hey, everybody. How's it going, guys? Whoa, I'm almost going to break my stuff here. It has been some time. I think this is my first live in 2 weeks. I know last week I was doing a retreat, teaching some breath work out in Georgia. And the week before that, I was training. I can tell you some things about what I was doing the week before, and maybe we'll get into that here in a little bit, but I can't tell you everything about where I was. I was in a place where I couldn't take pictures, and I can't tell you exactly who I was training and all these things, but I can tell you a little bit. How's it going? Good to see you, Simple Jim. Good to see you, Bob. Nice to have you guys here. Welcome to the Jesse Coomer podcast. And it's been a while. It has been some time. And Peter, happy Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. It's been a wild, crazy time. Actually, I've been going through a little bit of time where I'm like, I don't feel as much energy as normal. What's wrong? What's going on? And what I realized is I really haven't taken much of a break it's been about 3 weeks straight where I haven't had a break. So it's been a crazy, crazy 3 weeks. And I'm very, very blessed, very happy, very just amazingly grateful for all the opportunities. And I wanted to kind of, I'll share with you what I've been doing lately. And of course, I do want to talk today about the issue of goal setting. I recently got an email about that. I also have been doing, if you guys have been watching the YouTube channel, I've been releasing quite a few videos about NMN, and I've been doing an ongoing series with Dr. Elena Saranova about all of that stuff. And a lot of people are like, they're asking me about, hey, why haven't you made a video about your experience over this time? And actually, it's just been because I've been so busy I've been traveling, doing all these other things. So I'm about to make that video, but I thought, hey, why not? I'll talk about it in depth today, at least a little bit more in depth in today's broadcast today. So I'm glad to have everybody here. Nice to have everybody here. Santa is here. And for those of you listening to the audio of that, there's literally a person named Santa on the live feed here. And he just complimented me on my beard. So I've got to say, if you get a beard compliment from someone named Santa, I mean, you don't have to fact check. You don't have to fact check that. Thank you so much, my friend. And it's so nice to be back. So guys, today we're going to be talking about goal setting. We're going to be talking about NMN. I'm going to be taking questions about breath work, cold training, Wim Hof method, heat training, diet, exercise, anything you guys want to talk about. And we're going to be talking about all these things today. So just feel free to give me your questions, comments, etc. Of course, I want to thank everybody from my Patreon club who is here, and for all those other people that are not able to make the live feed from my Patreon club. You guys keep me going. You guys really do keep me going. And being a breath worker is not what you might consider steady employment. There are ups and downs, and there are all kinds of things. I am also an English professor as of right now. I'm still an English professor, so that does help. But the Patreon club keeps my breathwork practice alive. So I just want to thank everybody for being a part of that. And if you're not a part of it, I just invite you. It's only it's very inexpensive, $5 a month, and you have full access to my full catalog of pre-recorded breathwork techniques, sessions, and there's long ones, short ones. Actually, this week I released one of my shorter ones. It's about 5 minutes long, and it's specifically designed to take you out of a state of anxiety really quick. And that's for free on the YouTube channel. Just go to my YouTube channel, my landing page, and you can sample that one. You get the whole breathwork session for free. And again, thanks. That is all thanks to the Patreon members. So I want to thank you guys. Also, again, I'll be taking questions. If you have a question, you want me to get right to your question, we do have super chats that are available for you, and I will get right to your question if you have those super chats. Otherwise, let's just get into it, guys, because I've been missing this. You go on these trips and you're training all these people all over the country. And I've met a lot of amazing people, but I do also really enjoy so for instance, I do teaching at the university, and then I come home, and I'm always looking forward to having a little bit of time on this channel with this tribe. So I want to thank you guys for being here. So today I've had actually a few people over the past couple of weeks, and especially some people in these groups that I've been training, talk to me about goal setting. Now, some of them have been talking to me about goal setting when it comes to breath work, specifically building a breath work practice. Other people have been asking me about physical goal setting, physical and psychological goal setting. Other people have been talking to me about life goals. Jesse, I would like to write a book. I want to publish a book, or, I want to do X, Y, and Z. This is a goal that I have. And of course, I work with young people all the time. So, it's something that I get a lot of people asking me about goals. And so I'm just going to kind of freestyle and give you some of my advice, because this is something that, I do a lot of coaching with athletes, CEOs, all sorts of different people from around the world. And we start with breath work, and oftentimes we work into, hey man, I've got these goals. And that's what a lot of people don't understand how breath work really works. A lot of people practice breath. A lot of breath work practitioners don't understand how breath work can help you achieve your goals, and how doing training such as heat, cold, how doing physical fitness training, a lot of people just don't make the connection. They feel like, well, if you're doing a fitness goal, that can only lead, or I'm sorry, if you're doing fitness training, that can only lead to fitness goals. Or if you're doing breath work training, that can only lead to breath work goals. Or, this, that, and it's not going to translate to relationship goals, or to things that would have to do with physical goals. So breath work can't be related to me being able to play with my kids or having more creativity in my life. And so so the issue that I often work through is, okay, a lot of times I'll start with a client. We'll start talking about the issue of, okay, what do you want to start with? We start with, okay, we're going to learn some techniques. I need to sleep better, Jesse. Hey, I've got some digestion issues. And we start learning the language of the physiology. We do some tests on, okay, we try to test, okay, how do you respond to this? What is your tolerance of this? And we start doing a lot of tests. And then before you know it, what happens, and I have a lot of clients that stick with me for months and months and months. Some clients, we do like a 3-month intensive, and then we're done. Other clients I've been with for, years now. And so what happens is we eventually say, I've also got this other goal of, what I want to do is I want to write more music, or I want to get out of debt, or I want to quit smoking. And they act like oftentimes these are not related to a breathwork practice, or to a cold training practice, or physical fitness, or eating right. And the thing is, it's all really related. It's just how you're looking at it, right? Because ultimately, a practice of any kind is a series of taking responsibility for your time, for your actions, and actually implementing some kind of a discipline into it, so that you can move forward and progress, right? And so they not only does this, for instance, if a person's trying to quit smoking, or if a person is trying to do something, not only are there techniques that can help you with your anxiety, with your withdrawals and things of that nature, but also the simple act of adding something to your routine and keeping it is this. There's a surprising miracle that happens that I see time and time again. I've seen it myself, that it's strange. Maybe you're overworked and you're things, and the last thing you feel like you want to do is add something to your daily routine. But you'll find that oftentimes when we add that thing, even though it's like, I don't even see how I can add anything in here. But when we add that thing into it, we're adding an additional thing that says, okay, I'm building something with discipline. I have self-control. I am actually in charge of my time, and I actually have more time than I gave myself credit for. Not to mention the fact that whenever you're adding in these practices, they do help you stay more mellow and in a better mood. But it is surprising how we oftentimes don't see the connection. One of the biggest things that I often see as a person is, you know what, I feel like I need to get direction in my life. I feel like um, I have, like, for instance, I work with a lot of addicts. So it's interesting. So the same techniques, okay, that I will get paid to go teach to millionaires and billionaires and all these things, I give for free to the drug rehab centers here in my area. Because, hey, guess what? This is why I do what I do. I want to be able to give back. And they've got major goals too. And you know what? I remember when myself, and many of you guys know that I was I was a hopeless addict for I was an opioid addict for 10 years of my life. And that, you talk about digging yourself out and having to think about goals, right? And that's been over 10 years ago since I quit. But but it's there is a certain degree of goal setting that is helpful, and there's a certain degree of goal setting that is not helpful. And I want to talk a little bit about that too. Bob Larson says breath work made me reduce smoking for some reason, but no, uh, but but no to eating. I am living in Thailand, a food paradise. Well, yeah, there's Thai food is amazing. I actually just I had Thai yesterday for lunch, and I have a little bit of a celebration. Yesterday started the first week of the current cohort of the 6-week breath mastery course. And I like to treat myself before teaching those. Those are 2-hour intensives on different elements of breath work. And at the end of the 6 weeks, the class will understand their physiology better. They'll understand how breath work can work for them, and they'll have all the understanding to create their own personalized breath work practice. So it's my little indulgence. And the funny thing is, like, I usually I'll go for like chicken pad thai or like some kind of a pad thai dish. And the funny thing is, it's not actually that high in calories. It is high in calories, but it's not as high as it feels. Man, it feels like it's way higher than what it is. But yeah, what I always tell myself, I need those carbs. My brain needs the carbs so that I can teach. um, and then M. Peter, he says, writing the book is not a problem for me. I just struggle with revising. I think that's huge, right? And I would say most people that I know who have struggled to write a book struggle with the finishing part, right? Having an idea is one thing, but executing and the completion is the hard part. And I think that is maybe the hardest part. I've written 2 books. Now, many of you guys know that I am still revising my first major ebook, A Practical Guide to Cold Training. That was my first book that I actually completed and I released as an ebook. And the reason I released it as an ebook was simply because I couldn't afford to do all of the self-publishing things. And if you know anything about self-publishing, it's not that expensive, but there are some costs involved. And I was like, okay, what I can do, I can at least release this as an ebook and get things started. And I've already done one revision to it, and I'll be doing another revision before I do publish it on paperback. I really, really wish, I had had more time to complete that, but it's one of those things with your comment there, M. Peter, when it comes to revision. Um, the nice thing about the ebook format, especially if I'm hosting it on my website, is everybody who buys whatever edition, like the second edition now, will automatically get the third edition. So maybe release your book in Peter and then say, hey, this is the first edition, and then revise it. Now, I've also, the thing is though, I totally understand what you're saying though. Early on, I've written multiple things that were supposed to turn into books that just never did. And I think this is the hardest part about life, is that eventually you have to step out and say, this is me, here I am. And you have to be prepared, because I know there's multiple typos in my books. I know this because lots of people reach out and are like, Jesse, I read your book, I loved it, I just wanted to say it's changed my way of looking at breath work. And I'm like, ooh, cool. except for all the typos. And they'll list all the typos. And I'm going to go back and fix them. But you have to sometimes be able to say, okay, I am going to release this thing into the world and see what happens. And I'm kind of getting back to the idea of goal setting, in that when it comes to setting a goal, oftentimes people set goals that are way too specific. And I know this is going to sound like, wait a minute, I've heard, and okay, you can make a goal way too broad and you can make a goal way too specific. And this is normally, sadly enough, we as humans, we usually do one or the other. Normally we make it so broad. I want to be a success. Okay, that's a little broad, right? At least try to pick a direction. Or I'll have a person that says, I must, for instance, I'm going to be a success, and the way I'm going to get to be a success is that I'm going to write a book that is about this topic, and I'm going to publish it this way. And this is the only way I can have it that way. That's the only way I'm going to have success. And in my experience, I've learned that the best way to set goals is to be somewhere in the middle. You need to be specific enough that it's not just insanely ambiguous. Ambiguity will make you crazy. That's the weird thing about goal setting. Ambiguity. Like, for instance, if you set a goal of just simply, I'm going to lose some weight. Okay, I'm just going to lose some weight. Then you're not really setting that great of a, I'm not saying it's a bad goal to lose some weight, but try to say, okay, how can I make it a little bit more specific? I'm going to be able to fit into this pair of jeans, or I'm going to lose this many pounds, or maybe I'll do body recomposition. That's what I'm working on right now, guys. So just a little sneak peek. I'm trying. So when I turned 40 last year, and I'm assuming that every person hearing me or seeing me right now is saying, Jesse, how can you be 40? You're so youthful. You're so youthful, and the symbol of virility. Actually, I was talking to someone. They thought I was much younger, and I'm like, "You're the best. You are the best." Not that there's anything wrong with being 40, but I don't know. It feels like it should be old, but I don't feel old at all. I don't feel as young as I used to in some ways. Like for instance, a hangover is a real thing at the age of 40. So for, but like, there's a lot of things I feel like I'm healthier and happier than I was in my 20s. I was an addict, so it's kind of easy. I was a drug addict in my 20s, so I think it's easy to feel healthier and happier. So maybe I just did it right. I went way unhealthy when I was young, and then I'm leaning into my health now that I'm getting older, and so I feel like I'm aging in reverse. I don't know. But ultimately, there's a certain degree of I need to, when it comes to goal setting, my best advice to anybody is to set a goal that is somewhat in a direction. Pick a direction, north, south, east, west. Okay. And I'm not saying you have to have a longitude and latitude. Just pick a direction. I'm going south by southwest. Okay. So what I mean by that is, say, I'm interested in this and I seem to be good enough at it and have enough, skill or talent in this particular area. The Japanese have a term called ikigai, and that is essentially the reason why I wake up in the morning. So find out what that is, and obviously you also need to be able to make a living, and you have to be able to have friends and relationships, and you have your needs met. But ultimately, you have to have somewhat of a direction. But I am a big fan of not being insanely, like incredibly precise about that. And case in point, I never would have gotten into breath work if I were incredibly precise with my goals. For instance, whenever I decided to take responsibility for my life, and that is, when I say that, I mean whenever I decided to get off of drugs and alcohol. And I mean, I still drink, but it's not like I should just say drugs. I never really had an alcohol problem. But whenever I decided to take my health and my well-being seriously, that was a direction. I never said I'm going to gain this much muscle mass. I never said I'm going to, I never would have thought about all the health stuff that I do now. In fact, are you guys familiar with mukbangs? This is a phenomenon on YouTube. I thought it was a dirty thing until I watched some of these things. It is, in a way, it's kind of dirty because they get food all over the face. but but basically, it's these people who they just sit there and they eat into just ridiculous amounts of food. And I'm thinking about doing a mukbang with like nutritional supplements and healthy foods, and just to see if that happens, just to see if that takes off. but I never set out to be the person that I am today, but I did set out to be the person I am today, because the person I am today is a person who is just interested in a general direction, and I want to be open. And the one thing I have found, and this is not me being esoteric, spiritual, or anything like that, but you can believe in what you want to believe, however you want to believe it. All right. I have learned that if I pick a direction and I just genuinely do my best, right? I have to pick a direction. So for me, it was like I'm taking responsibility for my health and my mental well-being. And I said, I'm going that direction. When I started this off, I never thought I would coach people or be going around the world teaching the military how to do these things. I never once, I mean, and I got to tell you guys about this here in just a little bit, but like literally, I cannot tell you much about the people I trained 2 weeks ago and where I was and all these things. I can tell you just little bits, but I never set out that I was never like, that's what I'm going to do. I was like, I'm just going to be open to taking responsibility for my health, my wellness, and then I'll just see where I go from there. And of course, never was it part of the goal to grow the most glorious beard in all of YouTube, but that happened. But anyway, I never thought I would do any of that. And this is the thing that I have found to be true in my life. And one of the things about this YouTube channel and also the podcast, because this is on my podcast now, so it's Apple Radio, Spotify, if you ever want to listen to the audio. Yeah. One of the things that I'm trying to look at this channel as is also, what if I were to suddenly die? And I want to give as much good advice to my son as possible, and of course I would hope that some of the things that I say are helpful to other people, and maybe that help the world become a better place in a small ripple of a way. So, but like none of that was part of the original goal. The original goal was just, I'm going in this direction. And then if you pick a direction and you do your best, that's I think the most underrated part, just doing your best, remembering that you're flawed, you're a human being that's going to make mistakes, right? So you're going to make mistakes, you're going to mess up, you're going to get discouraged, and that's all part of it. And you're going to have deviations. Like, for instance, there was a little bit of time. Listen to this. You won't believe this. So I live in a small town. There are great things about small towns. There's no traffic here. There's barely any crime. It's very quaint and wholesome. It's a quiet place to live. The sushi isn't good. Okay. So if you move to a small town, don't expect to go out to eat much and enjoy what you're eating. But hey, I like to cook. I care about what goes in my body, and I know that if I cook it, I know what's happening. I know what's going in here. So yes, deviations, V. Thomas. So there's going to be deviations, and what I mean by that, you might get off on a tangent. You might be in this certain direction with your goal setting. You're looking for the future. You're doing your best, and you might get interested in something that doesn't pan out. It just didn't pan out at all, and let's see. Bob is saying, I want to stay, but well, hey, Bob, thanks so much for being here, my friend. And you got to get your sleep, And this will be recorded and it's on my podcast. And of course it's on YouTube and on Odyssey, by the way. All of my videos are backed up on Odyssey. So if you head over to Odyssey, you can check out everything over there. Send me some crypto. But anyway, deviations. So there were some things that I thought, man, I'm going to go in this direction. I would get really interested in this or that. I would spend quite a bit of time and resources just looking into certain pathways that eventually I found out, nope, I don't want to do that. That's not where I'm going to go. And it's not to say that I think those pathways are bad. It's just, it wasn't where I should be going. For instance, there was a time when I thought maybe I'll go and I will become a certified yoga instructor, because a lot of what I learned started off whenever I started practicing yoga. I don't really practice yoga anymore. It's not even really a big part of my life. I think it's great. It's the only reason it really got me interested in breath work, and I really enjoy when I get to go to a yoga class, but I'm not upset that I didn't become a yoga instructor. There was also a time whenever I thought maybe I would, I also thought I would become a locksmith. Yes, this happened. So, like I said, I live in a small town, and I think there's only one or two locksmiths in the whole town. So there's the kind of people that can open up your car. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people that actually change out the locks on your doors and in your house or in a business. And I was like, that sounds like a kind of a cool little business. So I bought some books. I started practicing, and eventually I'm like, nah, I don't think this is a direction I'm going to go. And I don't have any regrets. Sometimes I think about it. And sometimes I talk to people who are like, man, I don't know what to do. I'm like, hey, you could become a locksmith. But ultimately, there's deviations. There are things that are going to be dead ends. And I think those are awesome, because and I think it's important to explore them and not to look at them as dead ends, and not to look at them as things that are bad. And this is the same even in breath work. So breath work, obviously, for me, has been something that has, it's become one of the biggest loves of my life. I wake up every morning just like, I'm not kidding, guys. I wake up every morning and I am just like, it works. How cool is that? How awesome is it that breath work works? I am so excited about it every day. But there are some things that I would get into, and I've trained with a lot of people. So in order for me to write my book, in order for me to be the best in my field, I go and I listen to everybody's different opinions. I learn from a lot of different people. Okay, and I think that's important no matter what field you go into, just to be a sponge. Go around and say, "Oh, you do this thing that I do. Well, why don't you teach me what you think about this thing?" And there were some times whenever I kind of really got into something, and then I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I can really buy all that, but I'll take a few nuggets of truth, a few nuggets of skill and some ideas, and I'll take that and I'll incorporate that. It wasn't a total loss, but ultimately, if like I think about where I am now and where I'm going, and it's one of those things. Like right now, my goals is just to keep doing my best. And I don't have any grand goal. And I know there's a lot of advice that you'll get out there. Hey, have a goal. And I'm not saying don't have a goal. I have a direction. I think that might be where I vary from that rule. I think have a direction, decide, hey, this is something that I love to do. These are some of my interests. I'm good enough at this that I could probably continue moving forward. And it's also something that there's a future in. So for instance, I played video games so much. I was not only a drug addict, but I was a video game addict probably, which is a great combination actually. I mean, I think, I mean, probably should be considered like performance enhancing drugs for video gaming, because you just sit there mindlessly and play video games all day. And hey, I enjoyed it. I was enthusiastic about it, but ultimately I didn't, there was nowhere to go with that other than just keep playing video games. I did enroll in a school to learn how to make video games. And I realized, nope, that's not for me. And the reason for that was not because I don't want to, create worlds and things like that. I thought that was really cool. Learning coding languages is kind of cool. But for me, I've realized that what makes me really happy is being around people, is talking to people. I like being social. You know, this whole there's all these words that I can't say, but this thing that's been happening that's affected all of us, that's kept us indoors. Or not necessarily just indoor, the thing that what I'm talking about, this thing that's affected the whole world, and it's been around for about 18 months, maybe 19 months. That has been really hard on me because I'm a big hugger. And not only am I a big hugger, but I'm a big hugger, right? I give big hugs and I really like to hug. And I'm really a people person. And so sitting at my office coding all day just was really hard on me. And actually, as an English professor, the reason why I got into being into the liberal arts was because one of my great passions is to have an open mind and to discuss things and think critically with other people. The social element, that was what really got me into it. So it wasn't that I loved to read books all the time. It wasn't that I necessarily liked to write all the time. It was the ideas. And so these things, okay, ideas, talking to people, let's see, concepts, open-mindedness, all of these things, eventually you can say, well, maybe if I just find some things I'm really excited about, I can kind of incorporate these things. So when it comes to breath work, think about that. You really have to be open, especially where I was starting from. You got to be open because there's a lot of breath work out there, and a lot of breath workers out there that want to make extra claims beyond what breath work can do for your physiology and your psychology. This is what it's going to do for, this, or, there are a lot of things that they'll make claims, or in order to do this practice, you must be a vegan, or in order to do this practice, it has to be this way. Or you have to say a mantra. And what I want to do is I want to just be open to everything. And then just try to look at it open-mindedly, make discussions, ask questions, find out what I believe is really worth taking with me and maybe what's not, and just go there, and bring that along with me. So ultimately, that's why this direction seemed to work well for me. And so when I give advice to young people, and not just young people, just all of us, we all need advice on goal setting. My biggest advice is just kind of get to know yourself, be honest with yourself. And I am going to answer some of these questions here. So I appreciate the questions. Obviously, if you want to interrupt me, do like one of the super chats, and I'll interrupt. But I've got some ideas. I'm hoping my ideas are good. But ultimately, when it comes to setting goals, picking a direction, and then just doing your best. And then here's the thing. Here's where it is a faith statement. Okay. And I've seen it happen over the 6 or how many ever years that I've been doing this professionally. If you pick a direction and you do your best every single day, then what happens is, and you just grind at it, you keep going in that direction. Okay. Then what happens is there's going to be opportunities that arise. They're just going to come at you, and you're not going to be able to predict what those opportunities are, but they will eventually appear. And this happens, what they say that it usually takes, 5 to 10 years to be an overnight success. And what that means is essentially it takes a long time for you to get the skill, for you to position yourself within whatever thing you're trying to do, and also for people to know what you're trying to do. So even if it's something like, hey, I have certain goals for my relationships or physical goals, a lot of times it takes time for all the machinations of whatever is going on to apply to your goals. So picking something, staying with it. And I'm not saying, like, some people will say, just do that one thing and then don't focus on anything else. I'm not like that. I think you should have a holistic view of your life. Don't just focus on one thing and ignore everything else. You need relationships. You need a day job. You need to pay your bills and things like that. But whatever it is you do, whether it's for career or whether it's just a physical goal or a specific health goal, just the longer you stick with it and incrementally get there, don't feel like you have to get there all of a sudden. Then before you know it, you've made amazing progress and you'll never stop. You can just keep on adding and adding and adding. So anyway, that is a little bit of advice for goal setting for me. It's not a matter of making a vision board or writing a list of things that I have to do by this date, or writing a check to yourself that you're going to cash on whatever day. Those things are fun, but ultimately, don't be so close-minded. I think have an open mind to say, I don't know really what my ultimate goal is. I just know that I'm going in this direction, and be willing to change directions too. If that direction, if it's not working for you, if you don't want to go in that direction anymore, we have this logical fallacy. So as a teacher of research and rhetoric, I get to talk about the logical fallacies all the time. And one of the fallacies of thinking that we as human beings have is called the sunk cost fallacy. And what that is our inability to make amends with the fact that even if we've spent a certain amount of time in one direction, we should probably say, okay, at some point I should quit going that direction and then go back and go a different direction. But oftentimes we just stick with that direction because we're like, I've been doing this for so long. I don't want to go back. I can't go back. I got to keep going forward. We do this in relationships all the time. I've been with my wife or husband or girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever for so long, for this many years. Even though they're cheating on me and it's an abusive relationship, I'm just going to stay in the relationship because we've been in it this long, right? And we have to be willing to reevaluate and look at our situation and say, well, it's not as bad as we think it's going to be. Like, sometimes you need to move back in order to go forward. Sometimes you need to retreat in order to advance. So really thinking about, okay, this thing just isn't working. I'm going to have to use some time to think things through and to get better. There's nothing wrong with doing that, even though it feels like at first, it really does feel like there's some insurmountable change. I can't make that change because it'll be too painful or it'll be too much work. Anyway, so those are some thoughts I have on goal setting. It is an important part of life, but I think it's something that I think it was Dwight D. Eisenhower that said that plans are indispensable, but plans are also useless, right? You need to try to make a plan. You need to have a direction, but don't be so married to the plan that it's the only thing you can think about. Right? You need to be able to be open to those possibilities. That's my advice. So I'm going to take some questions now. I'm also going to talk a little bit about NMN, and again, happy Friday, everybody. I'm so happy to be back. I was training the United States military, and again, I can't tell you where I was, and I think I might have mentioned where I was in one of my previous podcasts. So please don't tell on me. But I can't tell you necessarily who I was training. Couldn't take any pictures, but they were so awesome. The group that I was training, some of the most motivated, positive thinking, just some of the most excellent human beings I've ever met. And I did a 2-day intensive with them, and just awesome, 100%. We did do a lot of breath. And of course, we primarily focus on breath, the things that are in my book. One day we did some cold training due to the illness, okay, that is going around that shall not be named. I was not able to ice bathe them. I couldn't put them all in an ice tub because there were so many rules about that and they didn't want to spread it or whatever. But so what we did is we used ice buckets. So I bought 50, between 50 and 100 ice, 5 gallon buckets. And we filled them up with just straight up ice water. And we're talking like mostly ice. And these guys, we did extremity training, we did focus training, learning how to take control of our breath so we can take control of that fear response, that stress response. And there's a few of them that that couldn't handle it all, but most of them were really, really good and they stuck with it. So it was really great. So let's see here. V. Thomas, yoga is great if you're going to be a dancer. Yoga is great for a lot of things. Yoga really, I mean, I don't have any problems with yoga at all. Like I said, I got into breath work because I started with yoga and then I learned about pranayama and then I learned about Wim Hof method and I learned about all these other things. I mean, one thing led to the next. It just eventually kind of phased out of my life. And I do a lot of mobility routines. In fact, actually, I'll go ahead and take the time to announce this now that we're 40 minutes deep into this broadcast. I'm about to come out with a program. Right now, we're in the beta testing. So if you're in my Patreon club, very, very soon, you're going to get the ability to access this course for very, very cheap. We're talking, it's just going to be super, super cheap. This thing will eventually be much more, at least 5 or 6 times the price that for the beta testers. But what we're looking for is people that want to test this program. It's called Breath Applied Mobility. And I've been working with a physical therapist for over a year, and we literally have invented a way of combining some of my techniques and her techniques together to and there's a synergistic effect. And so we're looking for some test subjects. We're looking for some beta testers. It's an 8-week program. It's on demand, or it's 8-week program, and it is drip content. So we force you to take 8 weeks because we don't want you to rush the thing. But ultimately, it is using a lot of the techniques she uses, especially she does a lot of work with professional athletes. So a lot of those things, and we've worked together to say, okay, how would these things work together if we used this element of breath with that element of mobility and of what is it? Well, basically, it's mobility routines that are specific. So we've combined them in a way that there is a really cool synergistic effect, and I'm hoping that I'm hoping that you guys will enjoy that. So that's coming out in the near future. Nucleamic. I'm skipping around here. Hey, nucleamic from uh, from ZA. How's it going? So which drugs? I was on a prescription medication that it was called tramadol, and it was a combination of opioid, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, um, all sorts of it had like I think 3 or 4 mechanisms that worked on the brain, but it was an mu receptor agonist. So I mean, it was really, really difficult to get off of, and I was on it for 10 years. And the amounts I took, eventually someday I think I'll talk about it more in depth, but the amount that I took every single day was probably lethal. And I did it for every day for years. And so there's a lot of issues that I'm still working through with my health. There's some ramifications that stuck with me. So I'm still working through some of these things. For the most part, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's been, I think, 12 years since I quit. I've never had a relapse or anything like that, and I try to give back to the addiction rehab clinic. So I do my rounds to rehab clinics because ultimately for me it was a matter of running away from discomfort, running away from anxiety, running away from social anxiety because this strange thing. So get this. So I have always been a very extreme extrovert, but I've also always had social anxiety. So yeah, so the thing that I needed in my life in order for me to feel whole and to really feel like I'm a happy human being also gave me incredible anxiety. And as a youngster, I was 18 whenever I started on this. I was much younger when I started a lot of different drugs. Okay. But the one that eventually hooked me, I was 18. So, I mean, you don't even have a prefrontal cortex completely done yet. So I got started on that pretty young. And um, I, um, I it fixed the problem. And that's the thing. Of course, people always talk about it's a fix or this or that. It's very difficult if you've never experienced what addiction is like to completely understand. But 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 it was one of those things where I no longer felt that anxiety, that social anxiety. So I felt much better. The weird thing is that I also no longer felt the need to go out and be social anymore. So, it led to a lot of destructive behaviors and habits. I'll talk about that some other time a little bit more in depth, um, but yeah. Let's see. It says, thanks for your answer, Jesse. Myself and my friend were doing a lot of cocaine, and since starting breath work and cold exposure, many months, it's completely absurd to think of doing it again. Yeah, your brain really is the ultimate dispenser of all these of all the drugs that you really need. And ultimately, what will make a person happier, and Jung talks about this. So Carl Jung talks about that eventually we have to convince ourselves, we have to become convinced at least, that reality can be better than fantasy, than running away from reality, in other words. And let me just say, if you're watching this and if you're addicted to drugs or anything, I understand how it feels like there's just no way a person. I had forgotten, right? A decade had passed, right? I had forgotten what not being high was. I'd literally forgotten what it felt like. And I was like, maybe it's just, maybe I'll lose who I feel like I am. And there's all sorts of things going on in my head. But but eventually, I just weaned myself off. Fortunately, um, fortunately, I had the wherewithal to do it, and I was set. It was one of these funny things. I enrolled in grad school, and that gave my life enough stability so that I could gradually decrease my intake of my desired drug. And the funny thing is, that would be probably a terrible idea for most people, but it worked for me because I felt like I was heading in a direction. And this goes back to the goal setting that I was just talking about. I actually was heading in a direction that I felt like this is good. I was able to harness. There's a lot of chemicals within our brain that are important, that they're there to tell you you're heading in the right direction. And I was able to harness those chemicals, and I was able to say, you know what? It feels better, even if I'm not like feeling amazing and high and numb and all these things. I would rather be heading in this direction with my life than over here in the drug camp. And the big thing, if you're ever addicted to something, you have to understand that withdrawals, because I had to wean off. I was to the point where I was taking so much that if I had, and occasionally I would accidentally run out. And you could have seizures, and you can really have some terrible things happen if you suddenly get off of a drug that you're addicted to. And so for me, I was convinced if I keep going this direction, I think I'll be much happier than if I stay with this addiction. And so it wasn't easy. It was one of the hardest things I had ever done, especially at the time. But it made it so that I could get my happiness and my satisfaction from something other than a drug. And so that's so important. That's so important in life, to be able to get satisfaction from your actions and to feel as though you're moving in the positive and the right direction. And of course, if you've read my book, a complete or a practical guide to breath work. What did I call my book again? I do know the name of my book, A Practical Guide to Breath Work. I talk about the dopamine feedback loop, right? And this is one of those things that what's funny is there are people in the breathwork world who just don't understand what dopamine is. And they act like, hey man, we're going to do dopamine breath work. And I'm like, well, really, dopamine normally is what makes us crazy and anxious. We're generally in the modern world drowning in dopamine. That is normally not the problem. The problem is getting out of these dopamine feedback loops. But, it sells. And so people were like, yeah, man, you want more dopamine because it makes you feel good. Yeah. Is really not the case when it comes to how dopamine works. But when it comes down to it, um, dopamine is there to help you move toward a positive direction. You do need it. I mean, if you don't have it, you can get depressed, and absolutely you need it. But ultimately, it's there to move you toward a positive direction. And if you're feeling stuck and you don't feel like you're moving in a positive direction, you're going to feel anxiety. And there's a lot of things that, I mean, it can lead to, and it led to those things for me. So ultimately, if you're suffering from addiction, my best advice to you is first of all, don't. Well, I've got a lot of advice. And this episode was not meant to be about drug addiction. I can continue talking about it, but it's I don't want to bore you guys about that. Papa Geek's here. By the way, Skull. Papa Geek, real quick. I'm gonna get off topic just a minute to let you know I have already started. So every year, about this time, I go back and I watch the Vikings series, all of the Vikings show on the History Channel. I don't know if anybody in this audience is Vikings fans. I'm not talking about the sport. I'm talking about the show. For better or worse, I like that show and I watch it pretty much every year. Uh, so I'm back into that. Let's see if we have any. See if we have any of these comments. You do not control the addiction. The addiction controls you. Stephen Miller says, one of those things when it comes to addiction, and this may be an unpopular comment, but I've been there. So I at least have a little bit of experience. I've got 10 years of experience in being what I considered at the time hopelessly addicted. You do. I think we underestimate our own capacity for change. And so often, I think we see in these videos and movies that one of these days, you're going to wake up and you're going to hit rock bottom and you're just going to decide, and you're suddenly going to have like some light is going to shine down on you. And you're suddenly going to have all of this willpower and you're just going to throw all those drugs away and you're just going to, right. And that's not really how it is because every human being actually sort of understands this intuitively, but in a certain way. Think about this. If you want to make a major change in your life, okay, think about how hard that is. So let's suppose all of us are going to go back to college and major in something that you don't know much about at all. That takes an enormous amount of willpower to do. Now, I'm not saying that's exactly the same thing as addiction, but it's not like one day it happens. It's a series of many days that lead to weeks and months and all these other things. And it has to do with you. And we all have a lot more freedom and willpower than we give ourselves credit for. And so everyone's experience is different, and whatever. I'm just speaking from my experience. It came down to, if I want this thing to change, if I want to, and believe me, guys, I thought I was going to just die an addict. I was pretty much you don't go 10 years of life and say, well, maybe next year. I mean, eventually it just gets down to, this is how I will eventually die. I'm not trying to get super dark on this podcast, on this particular episode. I meant to talk about goals. I guess, this is absolute goals, training. But what happens is I was resigned. That was how I was going to die. And then what happened for me is at some point I decided, okay, I do want to make this change. And I had tried multiple times. But eventually I said, I'm going to make this happen and I'm going to be smart about it. I'm just going to be smart about it. I'm not going to try to do anything crazy. I'm going to, and this is where I got pretty much the principle that I use on every goal that I have now is small changes over time pay off. That's literally the mantra. And I said, okay, um, and also with drug addiction, you also have to realize, you also have to make it understand that when it comes down to it, when it comes down to it, um, the drug is what makes you feel withdrawals and depression and all the bad things. The drug is doing that to you. The drug isn't making you feel good anymore. The drug is making you feel bad whenever you're not taking it. So basically, that was my first, even though I wasn't taking ice baths and doing things like that, ultimately every day was in a way an ice bath, because every day I had to decide I'm going to feel this much discomfort. And so slowly over the course of an entire year, it took an entire year for me. I took less and less and less until eventually, man, I'll never forget. Actually, I was thinking about this earlier today. I don't know if it was just meant to be that I'm talking about this today, but I was thinking about this earlier today. There's a video of me flushing my all of my leftover pills down the toilet. And what I did is I eventually went without any for one day. And I was like, okay, what's going to happen, right? I'd never done, I hadn't done that in 10 years, right? I had my first day without drugs in 10 years, and that was a big deal, right? And so I was like, okay. And so what I did is I waited 2 weeks and I roughed it out for 2 weeks. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'm not having some crazy withdrawals. I'm not having seizures. I guess I'm okay. And I flushed all my drugs down all my pills down the toilet, and I never looked back. And the funny thing is, I kept on finding random stashes that I had forgotten about for years after that. I would occasionally find a whole bottle. I'm like, how did, how did that even, how did I forget about this? But anyway, but ultimately the way I was able to do it, and this is the advice I have, and I'm going to write a book about this too, but I call it the Phoenix method in a way. I think it's going to be called the Phoenix method. It's literally this. Um, you have to to birth something new. Let something die, birth something new. That's my biggest um that's my biggest advice. You can't just be a not person. And I don't care if it's drugs, alcohol, I don't care if it's whatever, anything that you want to stop doing. You can't just be a not that. You have to learn, you have to grow into something new. That's my advice. Let's see here. I'm sorry for going off on that, but I felt like, hey, we brought it up, and I'm getting some comments here. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of finish that thought. Papa Geek says, thanks for yesterday. Hey, brother, I'm so glad you were on in this cohort. I'm really, really excited about this particular cohort of the 6-week breath mastery class, Papa Geek, and specifically because I am coming at it from a little bit of a different angle. I feel like I've really upgraded the class, and of course we're beta now. So this is our, I guess, technically first 6-week breath mastery class that is 100% complete. The curriculum, it's always every cohort will be better than the last one. That's my goal. I always want to improve, but I really feel like we're coming into our own on this, and a lot of the things that nobody knew about behind the scenes, as far as like this glitch or that glitch or this problem with the website, they've been fixed. So it was like the most peaceful post session, post classroom experience ever, Papa Geek. So I'm glad you were there, my friend. Let's see here. Let's see. Marshall, I did not miss a day of drinking whiskey for almost 25 years. After doing the breath work, I got to where I didn't even think about drinking. After a couple of weeks, I just had to try a cold shower. There you go, man. And doesn't it feel good? Right? Cold exposure, man, that's where it's at. Yes, there's discomfort involved. And guess what? That helps us. That's how we train for other discomfort in life. I right now I have one client. Actually, we just finished up an intensive, and so we're taking a break right now. But I have a client that's only 14 years old. Okay, he's an athlete, very good, very talented athlete, and his father knows me, and so he's like, "Hey, could you train my son?" I'm like, "Okay, we're gonna do this." Um, it's so funny. I didn't think this guy knew what I did for a living, and he reached out. He's like, "Hey, I know you do this. Please train." Okay. Uh, and he's a super cool guy. Anyway, but I told him, I was like, if you're 14 years old and you're learning breath work, this is the best thing you're going to do, not just for sports that you're interested in, but also for dating, also for driving, also for schoolwork, for your whole future. And I said, maybe add a little cold shower, add a little cold to the end of your shower. You'll be surprised at just how good this is for basically immunizing yourself from stress. I hope that I said the word immunize. I hope that doesn't get me off of here. Let's see here. Keep on breathing. Exactly. All right. Let's see. Eric likes the Vikings. The thing is, honestly, the part where Ragnar, when it comes to Vikings, maybe we'll have a whole episode on the Vikings TV show. But I have bonded with lots of people over Vikings, and I just like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm rooting for the Vikings. Sometimes I'm rooting against the Vikings. But my wife says it's a Viking soap opera, and maybe she's right, but I enjoy it. Let's see here. Marshall says, occasional drinking isn't that bad. Poisoning yourself daily is. Well, yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, hey, I'll have a beer or two or three sometimes. I mean, you have to know yourself, and you have to be honest with yourself. That, I think, if there's one thing that one bit of advice that I would give every single person is just be honest with yourself. What is this action? How? Because we're all different, right? But we all have capacities for things, and so just be honest with yourself. Don't lie to yourself, and just breath work gives you the strength. Definitely. I love breath work. I mean, there's definitely a lot of good things there. Maybe just 2 bottles of Dutch beer tonight. Dutch beer. Hey, go for some Dutch beer. No warm beer, says V Thomas. Yes. I prefer it cold as well. All right. So yeah, Vikings would be a great topic. Maybe I'll see. There's a fellow Wim Hof method instructor, and he and I, we met in Poland. He and I just really kicked it off, and we just couldn't stop talking about it. And we were not just the show, but also the culture and all these things. We're just kind of interested in it. It's kind of cool. So maybe I'll get him on here sometime, and we can just have a conversation. And then we'll see Papa Geek. Maybe we'll all get some ale. When I was training the military, I did get the chance to drink Viking ale, and I really enjoyed it. It tastes a lot like beer, but a little bit sweeter. So I actually did. I had a little bit of that when I was out there. That was really kind of cool. But hey, guys, we've been going for about an hour. I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank my Patreon members, and I want to just invite you, if you haven't already joined the Patreon club. It is incredibly inexpensive for what it is. It's $5 a month at least, and of course you can go for more. But what you get is access to my entire catalog, which I don't even know. There's probably 100 sessions now, and these are all different techniques, all variations, different things that you can do. Some are 5 minutes, some are half hour, some of them are like 45 minutes long, different techniques that you can use and you can implement into your life. That is available. Take a look. Just go to Patreon/Midwestern Method. Also, if you join, we also do have, every month we get together as a tribe, and it's this tribe is really a bunch of cool people. Some of you guys are here today, so you know what I'm talking about. And we get together every month and we do breathwork sessions together. So I'll do a live breathwork session. Last month, I believe I led everyone. Actually, I taught everyone Sudarshan Kriya. So that was really a cool session. They're not always that in depth. Some of them will do, one kind of technique, and then we'll do another. And, a lot of times I'll ask the group, hey, what are you feeling like? And we'll do some voting and things like that. So, we do a lot of those things. So definitely check it out if you've not already checked it out. And to those of you who are already in it, thank you so much. You literally are the reason why I know this thing is going somewhere, and I can rely on you guys to keep me going as I keep moving on with breath work. So I really appreciate it, and I really hope you get a lot out of the club. Um, I'll be putting up a new video, actually 2 new videos next week. And if you have any questions for me, any suggestions for videos, I am all ears. I've been so busy, I really haven't been able to just focus that much on in-depth videos. But if you have an in-depth video that you'd like to hear my opinions on, thoughts, I had actually somebody mentioned bodybuilding, like Wim Hof method and weight training and muscle building and things like that early on. And I'm sorry, I just now remember that I didn't get a chance to ask that or to answer or talk about that. If you're curious about other things, I am also a nutrition coach and personal trainer and all these other things too. So you just let me know what you want me to talk about, and I'll give you the straight up practical answers that you've always heard from me. So guys, thanks so much. I hope you have a great weekend. Make sure, if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to go out there and be kind to one another. See you next week.